So anyway, the definition of a liberal from the American political standpoint is generally somebody who, first of all, they support government intervention into the economy generally. Now, this isn't always the case, but as a general rule, they tend to. Another characteristic of liberals is they generally tend to see government intervention in such things as regulations and whatnot as more positive than negative. And finally, generally, liberals support the rights of minorities and other groups, and generally think that programs that help minorities and other disadvantaged groups get a leg up are a good thing and necessary for the government to carry out.
Okay, hello, my name is Faith Burns, and I will be debating on the conservative side, and I will be talking about taxes. So, as a conservative, we believe in a philosophy of controlled government, responsible spending, keeping taxes low, deregulation of businesses to compete in a free market, and even tax cuts where warranted. So, our country was founded on the prospects of being self-governed, control over our own money, thus being self-reliant. So, not reliant on the government, like we, the people, are reliant on ourselves. We have come a long way since then, but not necessarily for the better. Our government has now become a money vacuum that continuously takes people's savings for the betterment of our country. For the most part, anytime the government gets involved in any aspect of society, there is a need for money, and money comes from one source, which is us, the American citizen. Americans have unfortunately become numb to these numbers for taxes. They hear billions of dollars, they hear trillions of dollars, but I don't think anyone really seems to compute how much that really is. They don't think about the amount of zeros that are in $1 trillion. I mean, for example, the government is currently trying to enact a $3 trillion budget, and that's $10,000 in taxes for every American citizen. The last time America had a surplus was 20 years ago, and the last time America was debt-free was in 1835. So there's like a huge problem with the taxes and how they're being spent. The government rewards non-productivity. Just think about what we're going through right now, like with Corona. Like, if it takes your tax money, then gives it back to you in the form of welfare or at the end of the year for a refund check from the IRS. In Georgia alone, we have over 240,000 job listings. I mean, I'm sure all of y'all can go down the street and see the help wanted signs everywhere. Like, every single place is trying to hire. But for some reason, we have 231,900 people unemployed. And this is because a capitalistic society works on people working and striving for success. If your government is taking money to pay you to stay at home, then it just becomes a matter of time before the market collapses and you become self-reliant on the government. But then the government's going to run out of people's money and then chaos is going to ensue. So just like people are basically being paid to stay at home in America right now, and it's from the taxpayers. Our taxes are going towards people not being employed, and that's why everything's hiring, every business is hiring, yet no one is looking to get a job because they are getting paid more to stay at home. So our government will never be efficient in the use of your money. There's no incentive for them to do that. Politicians have one goal, and that goal is to be reelected. To get the most votes, you appeal to the lowest common denominator. In other words, you take other people's money and give it away to those who don't wish to produce. Our founding fathers never wanted there to be career politicians. You were meant to come in, serve a term, and then move on. So, in conclusion, the Conservative Party does not have a problem with taxes. The problem is how they are being used and how much money is being taken away from the citizens. Taxes are good as long as the government is responsible in using them.
So taxation is a very important issue for liberals in America, specifically the greater taxation on the wealthy and a closure of some tax loopholes that are taken advantage of by wealthy individuals and corporations. So the first argument for higher taxation on the wealthy is that simply they've benefited from living in the United States system, and they've benefited very greatly from the actions of the United States government. For example, the interstate highway system is maintained and constructed by the United States federal government. Therefore, many of these corporations' trucks are moving goods across the country, and they're benefiting from the fact that the federal government is paying for this large system. Therefore, it would make sense that these corporations would pay back into the government simply because they benefited from it. The second argument is that the government needs to implement certain programs, and a regressive tax or a flat tax would not be useful in solving these issues. It would only place an undue burden upon the middle and lower classes of the country who are already suffering. The wealth gap has increased greatly in the last 30 years, and many people can't even afford to buy a home or start a family, things that would have been considered normal to do 40 years ago. And so it's absurd to put a greater tax burden upon them. The wealthy can afford it. Certainly, most of their money is probably being invested in their companies and corporations, but it seems that they could spare some of it to help the country grow. Another example is policies such as universal basic income and possibly universal health care as well. These policies would help the middle and lower classes to get a leg up. In the case of universal health care, it would help people to afford medical procedures they might not otherwise be able to. And this actually benefits the economy. If there are more healthy people, they're more likely to be buying a lot of products. If people are living longer, they have a longer time to purchase products, and it helps the economy. The same argument is made for the universal basic income, which would require greater taxation to fund, but it would allow people more disposable income. And as it's been proven during the pandemic, in many cases, a lot of the stimulus checks went directly to purchasing consumer goods right back into the economy. So universal basic income would increase economic activity, and a lot of the taxed money would end up going right back into the pockets of those same wealthy people. So it would benefit them, and it would benefit the lower classes as well. As well, it's pointed out that, higher taxation on the rich isn't even necessarily necessary if we enforce the tax laws we have in the books. Many rich people evade the taxes they're supposed to be paying, and if it was enforced, we might have a lot more revenue. There was one estimate from the IRS that we might have another $100 million a year if we just assess taxes on one of the largest corporations in this country that's dodging taxes. So, this issue is very important, and it seems only logical that the rich, who have benefited so much from this country, and who have the capacity to fund things that are necessary for us all to continue having happy and good lives, and who it's necessary to fund things to continue the economy growing, seems only fair that they should pay a greater extent of their wealth.
Hi, I'm Kylie Smith, and I'm going to be speaking on the conservative side of immigration. When conservatives are speaking about immigration, they more focus on the immigrant crime that occurs when immigrants move to the United States, meaning that when immigrants come to the United States, they're more likely to commit crimes or be incarcerated in the United States. And conservatives also mainly seem to be more concerned with spending their funds on structures and things to help prevent illegal immigration or maybe even immigration in general. Conservatives also think that immigrants are more likely to vote for the Democrats than the Republicans from a variety of reasons, but one of them could be because the Democrats obviously are more towards immigration than Republicans are, which causes an issue because because Republicans want representation, and they're not going to get that if all of the immigrants are voting for Democrats and not Republicans. It causes, when more immigrants come into the United States, it causes low economic growth. So Americans who feel more feel more economically vulnerable. They feel threatened by the oncoming immigrants that come into the United States, because it causes less economic expansion, and that's bad for some people who feel economically vulnerable. Then just in general, the growth of immigrant population, it creates pockets of immigrants throughout the United States, and they have Americans, when there's more pockets of immigrants throughout the United States, Americans feel like they're in competition, and they grow unsettled with the social changes that accompany these pockets, and so it just causes more issues among the conservatives.
I can't believe I chose the presentation in September. It's so soon. It's practically, it is now. It's happening now. I'm not ready. This is bad. Is that a knock at the door? Who could that be? Hey, how's it going? Oh, what the heck? That's just me. What are you even doing here? Don't worry. I've come to get you out of this presentation. I'm gonna do it for you. No worries. But you're just me. I don't understand how you're gonna help anything here. Whoa. I'm not just you. I'm professional you. Come on. You don't remember me? If you're me, doesn't that mean that I'm still doing the presentation? Oh. Well. I mean, I guess, but, come on. Now you're wearing a jacket. Hey, so it's me again, and real quick before I pass it back on to professional me, I thought I'd take a second to kind of explain how I think the opening skit connects to the topic that I'm doing, which is immigration. And I think it connects to the topic of immigration because, by allowing immigrants into the country, by making it easier for them to get a citizenship, we're actually just really helping ourselves, which is essentially what the opening skit was. It's just me essentially helping me do my own presentation. And that's because by allowing them to obtain citizenship more easily, they're going to help stimulate the economy, our communities, and our future by increasing the diversity of ideas and people. And ultimately, we are going to benefit from immigration as much ourselves as the immigrants who are coming over are. Less restrictions and kind of easier to get in, like the citizens test, which is like a series of really, really hard questions about the United States government and previous historical events. Now, would I pass the test? No question. Of course I would. But So, on the subject of how immigrants can help the economy here in the United States, they can raise productivity in a lot of areas, including something like gross domestic product, GDP, and they can do that by taking a lot of jobs that are not taken, that need to be taken. So it's not like they're taking our jobs away from us, it's that they're taking jobs that need to be taken that currently aren't taken. Anytime you kind of increase the quantity of the workforce, it's easy to see how more work could get done, which is essentially what you're doing. You're increasing the potential pool of the workforce, allowing for more work to get done, which in turn, whether it's something like selling a good or service, helps the community, because now you're able to buy more things that you previously wouldn't be able to. Immigration fosters economic growth. We're allowing more people into the workplace, and because of that, those people are going to, in turn, from their jobs, earn income and profit, which then allows them to go spend that hard-earned money on products that, are sold in the United States, and therefore, that's going to stimulate the economy here. And that is kind of how they form the backbone of the economy, in my opinion. So there's economic reasons, there's morality on the line, and at the end of the day, we're just helping people just like ourselves.
Today I will be presenting the article titled Americans' Political Ideology Held Steady in 2020. So interestingly enough, most of the stats that are in this article are taken directly from Gallup polls. The article notes how the two major political parties have been increasingly polarized over the past couple years. So in order to show this, they look at the different ideological groups and the percentages of people that identify within those groups. And then they look at the article looks at the two political parties, Democrats and Republicans, and looks at the stats of ideological groups within those two parties. We see that there's about 36% conservative, 35% moderate, and 25% liberal. And this is from the years 2019 to 2020. So then if we look at it from a wider perspective, looking all the way back to 1992, we see how the different percentages have shifted a little bit. So in 1992, we have moderates at about 43%, and today they are now at 35%. For liberals, we have 17% identifying as liberal in 1992 to about 25% now. And for conservative, we have it staying about the same at 36%, with very little difference since 1992. So then if we're looking within the different political parties, we see that within the Democratic Party, we have 51% identifying as liberal, and this is since 2018. And we have 35% identifying as moderate, which has actually fallen about 13 points since the 1990s, and 12% identifying as conservative, which has also fallen since the 1990s. And then within the Republican Party, we see that there's about 75% identifying as conservative, 20% identifying as moderate, and 4% identifying as liberal. So very clearly here we see that ideological uniformity is much higher among the Republican Party. So, and for independents, we see that most independents identify as moderate, and those views have shifted very little over the past couple years. So independents are like the steady group, essentially. Currently, the two major political parties are pretty closely matched, which makes sense just due to the polarization that has been talked about. And the article kind of ends on an interesting point, saying that if leaders want bipartisan support, it's probably better to propose their policies towards independents who are predominantly more moderate in their views, and that this may gain them that bipartisan support that they want. So if we're connecting this article back to chapter 4, I would say the biggest thing to note would be this idea of political socialization. And within chapter 4 in the textbook, political socialization is defined in a few different ways, but I felt like the way that most fit the article was this, stating that political socialization is the process by which an individual acquires attitudes, beliefs, and values relating to the political system of which he is a member and to his own role as a citizen within that political system. And then that some of the most influential agents of political socialization include the way you grow up, to the school you went to the religious institution that you were a part of, and to the people that you were surrounded with. So all of these things affect the way you think about government, affect the way you think about politics, and affect how you identify with different parties. So essentially, to end this presentation, I would say that this increasing amount of polarization between the two political parties is due to this idea of identity, to associating with a political party due to the way you grew up, due to your political socialization.